Hello everybody and welcome to another top 5 board gaming video. Today's topic is all about skirmish games. So these are games that take place on a relatively small scale that have a heavy reliance on tactics. So you're looking typically at moving miniatures around, taking advantage of terrain, sometimes having to actually physically measure distances for attacks and abilities and things like that. It's sort of a subset of war games, and as you all probably know, I'm not a big fan of war games, but there are a few that I enjoy playing, and so in part I wanted to do this to get your guys' opinions. What are your favorite skirmish games and why? Please let me know in the comments below because I'd love to expand my repertoire a little bit. But that said, I'm going to dive right in with my number 5. At number 5, I've got Mechs versus Minions. This is a really interesting little game where the idea is that you're sort of programming your little robot minions to go out and attack the bad guys. Essentially, you do have a big giant board where you've got the good guys and the bad guys. You're going across and you're shooting and you're pew-pewing and you're doing all that kind of stuff. It's relatively unique though because it's more of a cooperative game than it is competitive. And so that's why it's a little bit lower on the list. But the fact is, it's insanely popular. It's very well designed. It has some wonderfully well done mechanics. And it's just frankly a ton of fun. So Mechs vs. Minions is my number 5. At number 4, I've got Memoir 44. In this game, the idea is that you have various scenarios that are taking place throughout the European front of World War II. And essentially, you have one player playing essentially as the Allies and one as the Axis powers, and you're just going and you're skirmishing across these specific scenarios. I really like this game because it's historically at least semi-accurate in terms of the actual scenarios and the battles that you're fighting, but it is a little bit lower on the list because it's fairly simplistic. Now that said, that could be a very good thing. Simple skirmish games that are easier to pick up and play are much better for newer players, but at the same time, a lot of the more hardened, true quote-unquote war gamers tend to frown upon it. But that said, I personally enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun, and I like the tactics associated with it. So Memoir 44 is my number 4. At number 3, I've got Battle Lore. This has very quickly risen up the ranks in terms of how popular it is, both amongst war gamers as well as more casual gamers, as a skirmish type game. This is a relatively high fantasy one where you've got all sorts of different races, factions type of things that everybody can pick from, and then again you go on your map and you fight against one another. You've got some order picking, you've got dice rolling, card playing, a whole bunch of different aspects going into it, and it's pretty fun. It's an enjoyable experience, and on top of that, the second edition was released not super long ago, and the best part is that it's still in print, so you can actually still get it, which for some other games it's kind of hard to. So Battle Lore, with a great balance between playability, replayability, as well as simplicity in order to pick up and actually get into it, is my number 3. At number 2, I've got Mage Wars, and for this I have 2 words: spellbook. I absolutely love the way that the theme is integrated into the mechanics and components of this game. The idea is that you are 2 warring mages, but you can't be bothered to actually attack each other, so instead you are summoning various creatures to attack for you. I love that within this game you have a bunch of expansions that represent different sort of common schools of magic that you see in high fantasy, things like D&D and Pathfinder and stuff like that, so that you have some very unique play styles as well as how you can potentially counter your opponent depending on who you're playing versus who they're playing and all of that kind of stuff. It's a really fun game. Unfortunately, I don't own it. It's been on my list forever. I really want to find a copy, but the fact that you've got a physical spell book containing all of your little spell cards that you can pull out and play, it's just an amazing experience and it's a ton of fun. Mage Wars, my number 2. At number 1, I've got the Xwing miniatures game. I personally adore this game because I like that it does a good job of combining elements from the more simplistic tactical skirmish games with the more complicated wargaming things like Warhammer and stuff like that. The idea is that you have a point buy in order to determine how many ships or whatever you've got on each side, and then you play various order cards and different special ability cards and things like that. You're moving your ships around around with little sticks, seeing how far you can shoot and how accurate you might be, all of that kind of stuff. So you have a lot of those different elements, but at the same time, it's really easy to play and it's a lot of fun. And so I personally really love it. That said though, I don't like how far Fantasy Flight has gone with it. They've added a ridiculous number of expansions on top of making a sort of modified system called Armada, where you have capital level ships. In this case, this is about the single person, like TIE fighters, Xwing, that type of stuff, which is really cool in my opinion, and I love the tactics involved in terms of turning your ships, how you're facing, all of that kind of stuff. It's all here. It's a lot of fun. Still very easy to get into, or I should say surprisingly easy to get into. Xwing miniatures game, my number one. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite skirmish board games. Again, this is a pretty big category, and a lot of people have relatively different definitions of if these are considered war games, if it's a subset of war games, or if anything where you have any sort of combat with miniatures is considered a skirmish game. So it's really kind of crazy. But again, I wanted to do this in part to get your guys' wisdom. I know a lot of you are far more familiar with this type of thing than I am, so please let me know anything and everything in the comments below, including your personal favorites, how you define the genre, all of that kind of stuff. You know I love to hear it all. That said, of course, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my social media pages where you can interact with myself and my channel in a bunch of really fun ways. And once again, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Thank you very, very much for watching it, and I will see you next time.